The blizzard clawed at the ER doors when the dog appeared. A German shepherd staggering through the white roar, a tiny girl clinging to its back like a frozen angel, her golden curls stiff with ice. The dog collapsed, but lifted its spine one last time to keep her from the floor. A blood-rusted key slid from her sleeve and skittered across the tiles. And when the dog looked back at the storm outside, its growl said only one thing. He wasn't done hunting them. If stories of protection, faith, and miracles touch your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe so more people can witness moments where hope walks in on 4 legs. Snow hammered the glass doors of Evercreek Hospital as Maya Ellison hurried across the ER floor, her navy scrubs wrinkled from a double shift and her dark hair tied back in a loose knot that had partially fallen apart hours earlier. She was 32, slight of frame but sharp in instinct, the kind of nurse whose empathy was so fierce it sometimes hurt to breathe. The ward was thick with the scent of antiseptic and cold winter air, the kind that lingered on coats and gloves each time the automatic doors hissed open. She was jotting a note into a chart when the lobby suddenly shifted. Something like a ripple of silence, as though the world exhaled all at once. Maya turned and froze. A German shepherd, massive, dusted in snow and bruises, limped through the sliding doors alone. His fur was sable black and gray, the exact color of storm clouds, with a distinctive pale triangular patch on his chest. His harness was torn at one side, the faded lettering barely legible. Beacon, search and rescue. But it wasn't the dog alone that stopped her heart. Draped across his back lay a little girl, no older than 4, her tiny arms wrapped loosely around his neck, as if she had fallen asleep mid-embrace. Her golden hair, soft curls usually reserved for dolls or Christmas angels, was tangled with ice crystals. Her lips were pale. Her pink pastel dress was stiff from the cold. She looked heartbreakingly beautiful, fragile, a child anyone would want to protect the moment they laid eyes on her. Beacon, injured, trembling, bleeding from his hind leg, was still lifting his back upward, refusing to let her slide. His legs quivered violently, but he stayed steady, as if the universe itself would collapse if he let the child fall. A clipboard clattered to the floor nearby as a nurse gasped. Another covered her mouth. No one moved at first. It looked unreal, like something holy or something tragic or both. Maya was the first to find her breath. "Oh my God." She rushed forward and Beacon growled, not in threat but in warning, a desperate, almost pleading sound. His amber eyes locked onto hers, wide with fear, exhaustion, and an unmistakable command. Help her. Don't waste time. Maya knelt low, hands raised, her voice soft as warm breath. "It's okay. I'm here. I'll take her." At the sound of her voice, Beacon's body sagged. The slightest release of tension, permission. Maya reached carefully and lifted the girl into her arms. She expected weight. Instead, the child felt feather-light, as if starvation and fear had hollowed her. As Maya stood, something small slipped from the girl's dress and clinked onto the tile floor. A key, rust-stained, cold, dried blood in the grooves, etched with a number, 17. Before she could lean down, Beacon dragged himself forward, nose toward the key as if trying to guard it or warn her. Maya tucked it quickly into her pocket as a stretcher rushed up beside her. Beacon tried to follow, but his back legs buckled. Still, he pushed himself forward, dragging his body across the tile with a determination she had never seen in any creature. He didn't look at the medical staff. He didn't look at the lights. He only looked at the girl. As the stretcher wheeled toward the trauma hall, Beacon jerked his head sharply toward the entrance doors. His entire body stiffened. A deep, trembling growl rose from his chest. Not the kind meant to scare, but the kind meant to warn. Maya instinctively followed his gaze. The glass doors had slid shut, but outside, half blurred by snow and streetlight, were two prints. Shoe prints. Black leather, sleek, shiny, expensive. And no one, absolutely no one, on staff wore shoes like that. Before Maya could process it, the wind swallowed the prints, erasing them. But the shiver in her spine stayed. Beacon's growl deepened. Whoever left those prints had been standing at the door, watching. Beacon's strength wavered, and he stumbled forward. Maya snapped back to the girl in her arms, the tiny thing whose breath trembled like a candle dying in the wind. Maya hurried with the stretcher, placing the child onto the trauma bed with gentle, trembling hands. Beacon staggered behind them, panting raggedly, leaving faint red streaks on the white floor. He would die before he let her out of his sight. Dr. Harris, a tall, square-jawed trauma physician with graying stubble and a permanent expression of exhausted sternness, hesitated when he saw the dog. "We can't have him in the trauma wing." But Maya stepped in. "He brought her here," she said, voice low and hard. "He's not leaving." Beacon answered for himself by collapsing. His body hit the floor, hard. His eyes remained half open, fixed on the trauma bed. "Get him fluids," Maya ordered. "Now." She knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shaking ribs. "You did it," she whispered. "She's safe now." But Beacon didn't relax. His gaze stayed locked on the girl, unblinking, hauntingly loyal. Inside the room, the girl's vitals dipped. Her sleeve lifted, revealing finger-shaped bruises, old ones, fresh ones, terrifying ones. "She didn't wander," Dr. Harris muttered. "She ran." Maya's stomach twisted. Beacon, even from the stretcher, lifted his head at the sound of the doctor's tone. He knew, he remembered. He had seen the danger, and it wasn't gone. When her vitals crashed again, the team rushed her toward surgery. Maya ran beside the gurney. The hallway pulsed with alarm lights and echoing shouts. Beacon tried, God, he tried, to rise from his stretcher. He pushed himself up. His legs slipped. His body shook. He took one step, then a second. A vet tech reached to steady him. Beacon snarled in panic. Not violence, not rage. Just the fear of losing the child he had carried across miles of deadly cold. His legs finally gave out. He collapsed, limp. But even unconscious, his head angled toward the surgical doors. His eyelids barely open, eyes dim but fixed, watching, guarding, refusing to look away even as darkness claimed him. Maya stepped into the surgical wing. The cold metal of the key in her pocket pressed against her thigh, key 17, stained in someone's dried blood. She didn't know whose it was. She didn't know why Beacon guarded it. But she felt, with a cold certainty, that this key did not belong to the child. It belonged to the monster who had left her in the snow. And someone wearing black leather shoes, was still out there, still watching, still waiting. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform, where every act of courage reminds us that miracles still walk among us, guided by a light only God could give. The trauma room smelled of cold metal, antiseptic, and something heavier. Fear lingering in the air like a shadow. Maya Ellison stood at the bedside, her gloves trembling slightly as she traced her gaze down the tiny 4-year-old body lying beneath warming blankets. Sadie Brooks looked impossibly small, swallowed by medical equipment and pale light. Her golden curls, still damp from melting snow, clung to her temples. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Dr. Harris moved around the bed with his calm, grave precision. His jaw was set tight tonight, the gray stubble along his cheeks sharpening the angles of a face that had seen too many children hurt in ways adults could not comprehend. "Let's catalog the injuries," he muttered, voice low but steady. "Her body is telling us what she can't." Maya drew closer, refusing to flinch even as her stomach twisted. The first wound revealed itself beneath Sadie's sleeve. Rope burns. Deep, not accidental. The flesh was indented in rings, the skin irritated from repeated tightening. "Those were pulled. More than once," Maya whispered, her voice cracking. "Whoever did this. They wanted control." Dr. Harris nodded grimly. "There's more." They lifted her dress carefully. Purple bruises layered over yellow, old pain buried beneath new violence. Small cuts shaped like narrow blades decorated her ribs, as if someone had traced sharp objects deliberately along her skin without striking anything vital. Torture, but calculated. Maya swallowed. Hard. Sadie's injuries were not random. They were controlled, practiced. And the closer Maya looked, the more her own past clawed its way up. Memories she tried to bury. Nights she had hidden under a staircase as a child, terrified to breathe because breathing made a sound. Mornings she woke up with marks her foster parents insisted she must have made herself. She steadied her hands, refusing to let old ghosts shake her. Sadie whimpered softly. The sound tore something open in Maya, something maternal and wounded. The door creaked. Beacon lay just outside, IV line attached to his foreleg. The big German shepherd still trembled from exhaustion. But the moment Sadie whimpered, his head lifted, ears twitching sharply despite the pain. His eyes, amber, stormy, desperate, locked on the girl. He tried to stand. The vet tech outside rushed to stop him. "Easy, boy. Easy. Your leg isn't ready." Beacon ignored her, hauling his chest forward as if pure instinct could compensate for a body collapsing under itself. His nails scraped the tile. His breath came heavy. But he held Sadie in his sight like a compass needle finding true north. "He won't stop," Maya murmured. "Not until she feels safe." "Then we keep the door open," Dr. Harris decided. "She responds better when she senses him." Sadie's eyelids fluttered. Just a sliver. Her eyes, huge, shimmering emeralds, opened enough to reveal panic. She scanned the room like a trapped animal, then landed on Maya's face. But instead of trust, terror filled her gaze. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know who touched her. Even Maya, with all her softness, looked like another threat in a long line of monsters. "It's okay, sweetheart," Maya whispered. "You're safe now." But Sadie flinched when Maya reached for her. The rejection felt like a knife. Not because Maya expected gratitude, but because she recognized the look. She'd worn it herself at 7 years old. Dr. Harris stepped back, allowing Maya space. Her body's in shock. Trauma that deep doesn't fade overnight. Maya inhaled slowly. "No, but sometimes a voice helps." Before she could lean closer, a soaked paper poked out of the little pocket on Sadie's torn coat. Maya pulled it open carefully. The ink had bled, but the trembling letters remained legible. "Do not open door 17. If you do, he will come." A chill swept through Maya. Not from the cold, but from the exact same number she felt in her pocket. Key 17. The key beacon protected. The key stained with blood. "What does this mean?" Dr. Harris asked. Maya shook her head. "I don't know. But someone left this for her. Or she wrote it herself." Beacon growled suddenly, a low, trembling warning. His ears pressed forward, his pupils sharp. "What is it, boy?" Maya called, stepping to the doorway. Beacon's gaze fixed, not on Sadie now, but past Maya. toward the shadowy corner of the trauma hallway where the lights flickered. Nothing stood there, nothing visible. But Beacon's body tightened, every muscle straining. A nurse passing by, a woman in her late 30s with sandy hair and a tired gait, slowed and frowned. He's alerting to something. Dogs don't react like that unless... But before she could finish, the overhead lights dimmed for half a second. A hum of electricity. A brief flicker. Then the lights returned. Beacon's growl deepened. Sadie suddenly gasped, a sharp, terrified intake of breath. Her thin arms shot upward, trembling violently, pointing toward the same shadowed corner Beacon had warned about. Maya whirled around. "Sadie, what do you see?" The girl's lips parted, but her little voice cracked out just one word. "Him." Then her body folded back into the mattress, trembling uncontrollably. Beacon barked, a single sharp, echoing cry. Not defensive, not protective. Terrified. And Maya, for the first time tonight, felt fear slip down her spine like ice water. Dr. Harris rushed back to the bed. "She's going into panic shock. Help me stabilize her." Nurses scrambled, one adjusting her oxygen mask, one preparing warm saline, another checking for internal injuries that might have triggered the episode. Maya leaned close again, whispering softly, "Sadie, breathe. You're safe." But Sadie shook her head weakly, tears sliding down her pale cheeks. Her small fingers clawed at Maya's sleeve, desperate and frantic. Her first attempt at speech since arriving. Her first words since Beacon carried her across the blizzard. "Don't let him inside," she whispered, voice paper thin. Maya froze. The girl wasn't afraid of the trauma room. She wasn't afraid of the hospital. She was afraid of something trying to get in. "Who is him?" Maya asked, trying to stay calm. Sadie's lips moved again, her voice barely existing. But before she could answer, a sudden spasm traveled across her small body. The monitors beeped wildly. Dr. Harris stepped in, grabbing adrenaline in case her airway collapsed. "We need to sedate her," he muttered. "Her heart can't handle this panic." "No," Maya said quickly. "Let her speak. Just one more line." But it was too late. The sedation mask lowered. Sadie's lashes fluttered. The terror remained. Even sedated, she whispered one final phrase, her voice so faint it could have been wind. "She's in the cellar." Maya froze in place. The words didn't match the situation. Not "I am." But she is. Someone else. Another girl. Beacon jerked violently at the same moment, dragging himself half off his stretcher before collapsing again. He tried to crawl toward the room, nails scratching the tile, pain ripping through his leg. But he forced himself forward until he could see Sadie's face again. His eyes locked onto her. Sadie's hand reached toward the doorway before her strength faded, and the room fell into a suffocating silence. Dr. Harris ran diagnostic commands. Nurses kept busy to control their own fear. But Maya felt something colder and deeper than any winter storm. Sadie wasn't the only child. Beacon had been searching for two, and the one still missing was somewhere dark, somewhere cold, somewhere beneath a door marked 17. If this chapter stirred your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Every act of courage, every rescue, every miracle is a reminder that God's light still finds us in the darkest places. Detective Nathan Briggs arrived at St. Haven Memorial just before dawn broke through the storm. The snow outside still slammed against the windows like fists, but inside, the hospital hummed with the slow, steady rhythm of exhaustion. He stepped in with a purposeful stride, boots wet from the blizzard, dark detective coat dropping melted flakes across the tiled floor. At 38, his face carried a rugged geometry. Sharp cheekbones, a square jaw shadowed by stubble. And his dark hair was always slightly tousled, giving him a restless, wired look. His ice-gray eyes, cold and calculating, had once been described by a suspect as the look of a man who hasn't slept in years. And maybe that was true. Briggs rarely slept, not since the night he'd failed a child he swore he would protect. He flashed his badge at the nurse, but barely glanced at her. His mind was already spinning with the case details he had reviewed during the drive. A 4-year-old girl found unconscious in a blizzard, carried on the back of an injured German shepherd. A key marked 17 stained in blood. A warning note. Injuries consistent with intentional restraint and psychological torment. He did not need more clues to recognize the pattern. He had seen this before. He had chased this before. And he had failed before. The detective's jaw tightened as he approached Trauma Room 2. Inside, Maya Ellison sat beside Sadie Brooks, gently rubbing circles on the little girl's hand. Sadie trembled beneath warm blankets, curls damp and clinging to her tiny face. She still looked fragile, breakable, a child carved out of fear rather than bone. Beacon lay at the foot of her bed, bandaged but alert, breathing through pain with slow, shuddering determination. At first glance, the dog's sable-black coat made him look like a shadow curled tightly against the bed. But his eyes, rich amber, never left Sadie's small form, following every twitch of her breathing. Briggs entered quietly, but the child noticed him immediately. Sadie shrank backward, her fingers instinctively clutching at Maya's scrubs, her small knuckles whitening. Her eyes widened, not simply startled, but frightened. Recognition of something, or someone. Maya reacted fast, protective instincts flaring. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "He's here to help." But Sadie's gaze did not soften. She shook her head violently and hid her face in Maya's sleeve. Beacon lifted his head immediately. His muscles tensed. The fur along his back stiffened. His lips parted, not a snarl of aggression, but a warning. "I'm watching you. I'm guarding her." Briggs raised both hands slowly. "Easy, boy. I'm not your enemy." Beacon didn't blink. Maya looked up at Briggs, the exhaustion from the night visible in the shadows beneath her eyes. She's terrified of something, or someone. Briggs exhaled slowly. "I know, and I think I know why." He stepped closer, but only enough to set the case file gently on the rolling tray near the bed. Her injuries matched the same pattern as the others from the missing children cases I've been trying to solve. Maya froze. "The ones from 3 years ago," Briggs finished quietly, his voice growing tighter, colder. "The ones I never closed." Maya understood the weight behind those words. She had worked in the ER long enough to recognize a person carrying guilt like a second spine. Briggs's entire posture radiated it. The stiff shoulders, the clenched jaw, the way he looked at Sadie, not as a witness, but as a wound he had failed to prevent. He moved to examine her chart, but before he reached it, Sadie peeked out from behind Maya's sleeve. Her eyes, round and fragile as glass beads, fixed directly on his. She flinched again. Her whisper was so faint Maya barely heard it. "His eyes." Maya looked sharply at Briggs. Briggs blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "Her eyes react to me?" "She reacted to your eyes," Maya said softly. Briggs looked away for a moment, jaw tightening. She might have seen someone with eyes like mine before. Maya swallowed. "Or she's associating you with whoever hurt her." Before Briggs could respond, a cold gust of wind slammed against the trauma room window. Maya turned to glance outside and froze. At the edge of the forest, where the snowstorm blurred white into gray, a tall figure stood motionless. He wore a charcoal long coat that flapped slightly in the wind, but his posture remained impossibly still. Too still. His face was completely shadowed beneath the hood. But what unsettled Maya most was the absolute lack of movement. No shifting weight, no swinging arms, not even visible breath. "Detective," Maya whispered, voice tightening. "Someone's out there." Briggs spun to the window, his instinct razor sharp. His hand instinctively brushed the holster beneath his coat. But the figure didn't move, didn't acknowledge them, just stood as if carved out of the storm itself. Maya took a step back, heart pounding. "Is he watching us?" Briggs narrowed his gaze. "I don't know, but I'm going out there." Before anyone could stop him, Briggs rushed out of the trauma room and down the hallway, boots echoing in quick, clipped steps. His breath fogged in the air as he pushed through the lobby and into the storm. Maya watched from inside. The moment Briggs reached the tree line, the figure vanished. Simply was gone, as if the storm swallowed him whole. But something remained. The faint jingle of metal rolling across the ice. Briggs reached the sound first, picking up a cluster of old keys, slick with ice. They clinked faintly in his gloved hand. When he returned inside, his face was paler than the snow. "What did you see?" Maya asked. Briggs swallowed once. A man. Tall. Moved like he knew the storm, like he belonged to it. "Did he say anything?" "No. He disappeared before I reached him." Maya nodded slowly, but her heart hadn't stopped racing since that apparition appeared. Beacon, though injured, dragged himself a few inches forward, eyes blazing like embers in the night. His hackles rose again. His gaze shifted to the window. He growled, a long, trembling warning. Maya knelt and touched his head gently. "What do you sense, boy?" Beacon leaned forward, pressing his head into Maya's palm. His breathing grew harsher, his body quivering in that subtle way dogs showed dread. Not fear for themselves, but fear for their human. Sadie's monitor beeped suddenly. She shot upright, screaming, eyes wide with terror. "Don't let him take me," she cried, her tiny voice shredding into sobs. "His eyes, they're like ice." Briggs froze. His own eyes, gray, cold, storm-colored, reflected in the trauma room glass. Sadie saw them, and she screamed harder. Maya tried to hold her gently, whispering soothing words, but Sadie only curled deeper into herself, sobbing uncontrollably. Beacon forced himself upright, collapsing twice but still pushing forward until he reached the bed. He laid his head on Sadie's legs, whimpering softly. That finally calmed her enough to breathe. Briggs stood motionless, his breath shallow, his guilt unraveling. Sadie lifted her trembling hand and pointed directly at him. "Don't let him take me," she repeated in a broken gasp, his eyes like the man in the storm. Maya looked at Briggs. Briggs looked at Maya, and the storm outside howled louder, as if confirming the unspoken truth. The man Sadie feared. The man in the storm. The man with the keys. Had eyes just like the detective standing in her hospital room. If this chapter touched your heart or stirred your courage, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Because where fear walks, God's miracles follow. Detective Nathan Briggs had interrogated hundreds of criminals over the years, but none of them had ever felt as unsettling as the man now trembling in the holding room. Curtis Pike sat hunched on the steel chair, hands cuffed in front of him, fingers twitching like they carried a tremor with a mind of its own. He was a man built from scraps, mid-40s, gaunt, with skin that looked too pale under fluorescent light, as if sunlight hadn't touched him in years. Greasy black hair fell across his forehead, and dark circles carved permanent shadows beneath his jittering brown eyes. His clothes, now collected as evidence, had been a filthy black hoodie and a torn bomber jacket that smelled of mold and cold metal. Even now, wearing a thin detention shirt, he smelled faintly of damp basements and stale fear. He didn't look like a mastermind. He looked like someone who followed orders because he feared everything else. Briggs watched him silently for a moment before entering. Maya stood behind the one-way glass, nervous, arms wrapped around herself. She had insisted on being present. Not in the room. She didn't trust Curtis that close, but close enough to hear every word. Beacon lay in the hallway just outside the interrogation corridor, bandaged, exhausted, and yet unable to sleep. His ears would twitch every time Curtis moved. Briggs stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with a heavy click. Curtis flinched violently. I told the officers everything already. I didn't hurt her. I swear I didn't hurt the little one. His voice was raspy, quivering, coated with an edge of desperation that made even Briggs pause. Not for sympathy. Briggs had none to spare, but for precision. Men like Curtis talked in half-truths when left unsupervised. But under pressure, they cracked open like thin winter ice. "Start from the beginning," Briggs said, sitting across from him. His posture was straight, controlled. "Tell me exactly who you work for." Curtis swallowed, throat bobbing like he was trying to force down a memory he didn't want to revisit. "I'm just a runner, a collector. I grab the kids that are marked." "Marked?" Briggs repeated slowly. "What does that mean?" Curtis twisted his hands, metal cuffs clinking. They all have numbers? Tattoos sometimes, or tags, or files. The little one, Sadie, she was number 17. He shivered violently. 17 was on the key, wasn't it? I know it was. I saw it once. Briggs leaned forward slightly. "Cabin 17? Is that where you took her?" Curtis shook his head so fast, it was almost a spasm. No. I never take them inside. I just deliver them. Someone else moves them into the cabins. I stay outside. I don't look. I don't want to look. Briggs's jaw tightened. "But you've seen someone taken in." Curtis hesitated. Briggs's voice sharpened. "Answer the question." Curtis's entire body stiffened. Then, slowly, painfully, he nodded. "Her sister. I saw her sister being carried in. I didn't know her name. Just that she was number 17, eh?" His voice cracked. "The child inside the cabin now, that's 17B. Maya gasped behind the glass. Briggs didn't turn. He kept his focus locked on the trembling man in front of him. Curtis continued, his voice shaking harder now. "I saw her the day they moved her in. She fought, she kicked, she screamed so loud I thought my ears would burst. But the man carrying her didn't flinch, didn't even grunt, just walked straight inside with her like she weighed nothing." "Who was he?" Briggs asked. Curtis closed his eyes, dread crawling across his expression. "I don't know his real name. We called him the Collector." Briggs's chest tightened. "Describe him." Curtis shook like someone experiencing cold from the inside out. Tall, long coat, doesn't come close, doesn't talk, just watches from far away, always. He clutched the edge of the table as if grounding himself. Never once have I seen him run, or hurry, or even breathe. A shiver scraped the back of Briggs' neck. "Curtis," he said quietly, "you need to be honest with me. When you look at him, what do you see?" Curtis's eyes snapped open, wide, terrified, almost animalistic. "I see something that is wearing a man's shape," he whispered. "But it's not a man." Briggs felt the weight of the words settle in the room like fog. Before Briggs could respond, the door behind them creaked. Beacon forced himself inside. No one had stopped him, because he pushed past the vet tech with stubborn, painful determination. His claws clicked against the floor. Curtis screamed. Beacon lunged forward, not to attack, but to sniff Curtis's jacket folded on the evidence table. The dog's body stiffened. His hackles rose. A low, guttural growl crawled out of his throat, a sound so fierce it felt older than instinct. Curtis scrambled backward, chair clattering. "No, no, no, don't let him near me. He knows where I've been." Briggs caught the dog's collar before Beacon hurt himself. But Beacon didn't try to break free. Instead, he stared at the jacket with a trembling intensity that chilled everyone in the room. "What's he reacting to?" Maya called from behind the glass. Curtis's voice cracked. "The jacket, he smells it. The blood." Briggs froze. "What blood?" Curtis's voice dropped to a whimper. "The one who wore that jacket carried Sadie before. When she was bleeding, I touched her only afterward. He delivered her first." Briggs exhaled slowly. "Who delivered her?" Curtis whispered one word. "The collector." Beacon suddenly stopped growling. His head jerked toward the one-way glass. His ears pricked up sharply. Every muscle in his injured body tensed. Maya, standing behind the glass, pressed her palm against it. "Beacon? What is it?" The dog stared at her. Not at her exactly, but at the reflection behind her. His pupils expanded, his tail stiffened. A soft, trembling whine escaped him, deeper than fear and sharper than instinct. Then the lights flickered, just once. A pulse. Curtis froze. "He's close," he whispered. "He's never far when a key's been found." Briggs gripped Beacon's harness, voice low. "Who?" Curtis looked up with tears streaking through the grime on his face. "The collector watches the keys. Each number has a door, and every door has a child." Briggs stepped closer. "Where are the other doors?" Curtis's mouth trembled open. 17 is only the first. Briggs's stomach sank. "How many more are there?" Curtis swallowed, tears spilling freely now. 20-something, maybe more. I never saw them all. I was always too scared to count. Briggs didn't soften. Scared of what? Curtis shook uncontrollably. Of looking him in the eyes, because he doesn't have the eyes of the living. Briggs felt the cold spread through the room like smoke. He asked quietly, "Curtis, tell me everything." Curtis leaned forward, voice barely a breath. "Door 17 is only the beginning." Cliffhanger, end chapter. Curtis covered his face with both hands, shoulders shaking. 17 is only the first door," he cried. "He has 20 more, maybe 25, maybe 30. I don't know. I never looked. I was too scared to see how many children were left." Briggs's heart stopped. Beacon whined again, low and mournful. And Curtis's final whisper fell into the silence like a sentence from a nightmare. "He has 20 more doors to open." If this chapter moved your heart or opened your eyes, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Because even in the shadows, God sends his angels to guide the lost home. The storm had thinned by morning, leaving behind a brittle quiet that felt heavier than the night before. The snow-covered forest loomed ahead, each tree like a silent guard refusing to reveal what it had witnessed. Detective Nathan Briggs led the way. snow crunching beneath his boots, breath steaming in the cold air. Behind him, Maya Ellison trudged carefully, clutching her coat tighter around her small frame. Her dark hair was tied back, though loose strands plastered against her cheeks from the freezing wind. Despite her exhaustion, her gaze remained alert. Every broken branch, every inexplicable indentation in the snow made her heart pound harder. Beacon followed between them, limping but determined. His sable black and gray coat bristled each time the cold wind brushed against the exposed wounds beneath his bandages. At 4 years old, Beacon carried both strength and old pain in his frame. His gait was heavier today, but his eyes, golden, expressive, and sharpened by instinct, stayed fixed on the long drag marks Sadie had left behind the night she fled Cabin 17. Every few steps, he would pause and sniff the air, trembling muscles tensing as though expecting a nightmare to step from behind the next tree. Briggs noticed. He remembers this place. Maya nodded softly. More than we know. Beacon stopped suddenly, his tail lowered. A choking sound, part growl, part sob, escaped his throat. Maya rushed to kneel beside him. "Beacon? Hey, sweetheart, what is it?" The dog pressed his forehead into the snow, trembling uncontrollably. It wasn't fear. Fear made dogs shrink. This was grief. Briggs had seen it once in a K9 survivor whose partner had died on duty. The sound Beacon made was identical, a strangled, helpless rumble from somewhere too deep to comfort. "He's remembering something," Maya whispered. She stroked the side of his neck gently, feeling him tremble beneath her palm. Something awful. Briggs scanned the earth around them. The child he failed to save? Maya closed her eyes. He carries that guilt like a person. Beacon suddenly lifted his head, staring into the woods with raw intensity. His chest rose sharply, breath quickening. Then, without warning, he lunged forward, dragging his injured leg but refusing to stop. Maya scrambled to her feet, following him as he traced something invisible but undeniable. The trail ended at a clearing. Cabin 17 stood like a rotting tomb, small, leaning sideways from years of neglect, its wood swollen from moisture, its windows boarded in uneven planks. No smoke, no warmth, no life. Only the stillness of a place that had devoured childhood screams and left nothing behind. "This is it," Briggs murmured, jaw tightening. "Cabin 17? Beacon began circling the exterior of the cabin, nose pressed deep into the snow. Tail lowered, ears pinned back. Briggs approached the door. The wooden frame was splintered in several places. Fresh wounds against old scars. Inside, the air was suffocating. Maya covered her nose with her sleeve almost instantly. The cabin was dim, the air thick with the smell of rust, damp wood, and something else. Fear soaked into walls that had no reason to hold them. Briggs switched on his flashlight. The beam cut through the shadows, revealing details piece by piece like a cruel unveiling. A set of frayed ropes tied to the legs of the bed. Wooden floorboards scarred by small drag marks. A half-torn photograph pinned to the wall. 2 little girls smiling in summer dresses. The left half of the picture was ripped away violently, leaving only one child intact. Sadie. Maya stepped closer, her breath shaking as she traced the edge of the torn photo. Her sister. Briggs scanned the boards again and knelt near one particularly deep drag mark. This is where she tried to crawl. Beacon pressed his nose to the mark, then whimpered softly and backed away. Outside, the wind moaned through broken boards. Maya felt a chill settle beneath her skin. What kind of place is this? Briggs examined the bed frame. A holding site? Temporary. They kept them here before transporting them deeper. Maya swallowed. Sadie recognized this place immediately. As if on cue, Sadie's voice echoed from Briggs's memory. "Here. My sister." Briggs's flashlight swept across the room again, stopping on something half buried under the bed. "There's something under there." He reached for it and froze. A wooden latch, small, old, almost hidden. A door. Maya's breath caught. "What is that?" Briggs pulled harder, brushing away dust and debris. A metallic clink responded, a lock, a heavy one. He wiped the grime from its surface. The number engraved into the metal gleamed back at him. 17. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. "The key, Sadie's key, fits that." Briggs didn't answer. He stared at the lock as though it might blink back. Beacon pressed against his side, trembling. A sudden, muffled sound echoed through the floorboards. A whimper, faint, high-pitched, like a child trying not to breathe too loudly. Maya went completely still. "Did you hear that?" Briggs lowered himself to the ground, ear pressed to the dusty boards. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, another muffled cry. Beacon threw his head back and barked, one sharp, agonized bark that cracked through the dead air. He pawed violently at the floor, nails scraping splinters as though desperate to dig someone out. Maya knelt, tears filling her eyes. "There's a child down there. Oh, God." Briggs pushed the bed aside, adrenaline burning through his veins. "We're opening this, now." As they worked, Beacon backed up toward the door, facing outward with a low growl. His ears pinned back, his tail stiffened. His entire posture screamed, "He's coming back!" But Briggs didn't turn. He forced the key into the metal lock. The perfect fit clicked once. Then everything in the cabin went silent. Briggs turned the key slowly. When the final gear locked into place, the sound echoed through the cabin like a scream. He pulled. The hatch lifted. A cold draft rushed up from the darkness below. Briggs stared into the blackness, breath shallow. "There's a door down here," he whispered. "But this isn't the only one." Maya's legs trembled. "How many more?" Briggs lifted the key to the lantern light. 17 is only the first, he said. "There are so many more." If this chapter touched your heart or reminded you that miracles hide in the darkest places, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform, where every story brings God's light a little closer. The air beneath cabin 17 felt nothing like the forest above. Up there, the wind groaned through broken branches and carried the sharp bite of winter. Down here, the air did not move at all. It hung thick and unmoving, as if it had been trapped underground with the secrets this place held. Detective Nathan Briggs lowered himself through the hatch first, boots landing on dirt that was colder than stone. Maya followed, one hand gripping the ladder, the other clutching the flashlight that shook slightly in her fingers. Beacon attempted to descend behind them, but Briggs stopped him gently, lowering the dog in his arms, despite the sharp grunt of pain Beacon released when his injured leg brushed the metal rung. Beacon landed awkwardly, regained his stance, and pressed his flank against Maya's leg. The flashlight beams cut through the dark, revealing a narrow underground corridor carved from old wood and packed earth. It stretched farther than they expected. Thick wooden beams reinforced the ceiling, though many had begun to rot, making the space smell of mold, dampness, and old misery. Briggs adjusted his holster and whispered, "Stay close." Maya nodded, her breath fogging in the beam of her light. She kept her gaze forward, but her mind couldn't shake the weight of the cries they'd heard above the floor. The faint sobs, the tiny voice swallowed by earth. She swallowed hard. We might not be alone down here. Briggs didn't answer. He didn't have to. Beacon suddenly stepped ahead, posture cautious but driven. His nose hovered inches above the dirt. He inhaled sharply, then let out a low rumble of anguish that vibrated through his chest. He recognized this scent. It was the scent of a child in fear, one he had smelled too many times before, one he had once failed to save. The deeper they moved, the more the corridor widened into a chamber, and that was where they saw them. Doors, small ones. A row of wooden doors built into the walls like storage compartments, each no higher than Briggs's chest and barely wide enough for a child to crawl through. The wood was gray, splintering, scarred by nails and time. But what made Maya's heart lurch was the numbers carved into each door. 14, 15, 16, 17. Briggs swept his flashlight across them slowly, jaw tightening. These aren't storage rooms. No, Maya whispered. Her voice caught. They're cells. She reached out without thinking, fingertips brushing the number carved into door 14. The grooves were deep, as if scratched by something sharp or someone desperate. Beacon sniffed along the door seams, whimpering every few seconds. His tail tucked slightly, a rare sign from a dog that had run into gunfire to protect a handler. Now he trembled as though the ghosts of the forest pressed their cold hands along his spine. Briggs moved to door 16 and crouched. The floor beneath it was disturbed, drag marks, faint footprints, finger lines. Someone was taken out of here recently. Maya clenched her jaw. Another child? Briggs didn't look up. Or Sadie's sister. The corridor shifted narrower toward the end, leading to a final room. They stepped inside carefully. The moment Maya's light illuminated the walls, her breath vanished. Small, dusty fingerprints smeared the boards. Tiny handprints, so many of them. Some frantic, some faded by time. Above them, scratched into the wall in crooked, desperate letters, was a message painted in childlike strokes. I want to go home. Maya pressed a hand over her mouth. Tears pooled instantly. Oh, God. The flashlight beam drifted downward to the dirt floor, and Maya saw something glinting faintly. She knelt and picked it up carefully. A bracelet. Tiny. Plastic. Strung with mismatched beads, pink, blue, faded purple, and tangled with several strands of blonde hair. Maya clenched it in her palm, tears falling freely now. This belonged to a little girl. Briggs placed a hand over hers gently, not romantic, but supportive, in the only way a man like him knew how. It may belong to Sadie's sister. Beacon whined sharply at the bracelet, pressing his nose against Maya's hand. Then he threw back his head and released a soft, broken howl, one filled with regret, a sound of apology from a creature that blamed himself for every child he didn't reach in time. Maya knelt and wrapped her arm around Beacon's strong neck. It's not your fault, boy. We're here now. Beacon leaned into her touch, trembling. Briggs scanned the walls again, voice low. There were at least 4 children held here, maybe more. Maya's voice shook. Where are they now? Briggs didn't answer. He stepped deeper into the room, following the drag marks along the floor, tracing the faint echo of the sob they had heard through the boards earlier. The chamber ended in a wooden panel that didn't match the others. Newer, smoother, with a small metal hinge. He pressed his hand against it. There's another space behind here. Maya stiffened. Another room? Another door. Briggs hooked his fingers under the wooden lip and pulled. Dust billowed upward as the panel swung open, revealing a narrow vertical shaft descending deeper underground. The ladder inside looked ancient, metal corroded to orange. The temperature dropped sharply, frost forming along the wooden frame. Maya felt the cold wrap around her ankles like fingers. Briggs pointed his light downward, but the beam vanished into darkness long before reaching the bottom. "We're not done," he muttered. Beacon suddenly jerked his head back toward the corridor. His ears shot upright, rigid. His pupils widened, his hackles rose like a wave. He stared behind them at the row of numbered doors, then growled. Not a warning growl, a terrified growl, a get-ready growl. Maya turned instantly. "What is it?" Briggs stepped beside her, hand already on his holster. Beacon stepped backward until his body pressed between them, shielding both like a wall of fur and muscle. In the silence of the underground chamber, something moved. Not loudly. A whisper, a breath. Right behind door 15. Maya froze. "Did you hear?" Before she finished, the tiniest voice drifted through the cracks of the wooden door. A cry. Soft. Choked. Alive. Briggs's entire body went rigid. "There's someone still in there." Beacon scratched at the door frantically, nails screeching against the old wood. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. "We have to open it, now." Briggs grabbed the latch, but before he could wrench it open, a violent vibration shuddered through the corridor. Something heavy dropped above them, something metallic. The radio in Briggs's pocket began to ring. He pulled it out. Not his radio, his phone, a number with no caller ID. The connection made the chamber fall silent. Briggs answered cautiously. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was low, hollow, and lacked anything human. "Leave the child," the man whispered. "She does not belong to you." Maya grabbed Briggs's arm, whispering, "That's him. It's the collector." The voice continued, icy calm. "She belongs to me." A faint clinking noise echoed through the phone call. Keys, metal keys. The same chilling sound they had heard outside the cabin. Then a second sound, much closer. Behind them, directly in the corridor, right where the numbered doors waited. Briggs turned slowly, the phone still at his ear. The final sound from the caller whispered like a curse. "I'm already here." If this chapter stirred your heart or reminded you that even in darkness, God places angels among us, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform for more miracles and courage-filled stories. The warmth of the hospital should have been comforting after the frozen grave of Cabin 17. But when Briggs, Maya, and Beacon stepped back inside, the air felt colder than anything in the woods. The walls hummed with fluorescent light, yet every corner seemed to pulse with a tension no one could name. Nurses whispered in the hallways. Security officers lingered near exits. And somewhere down the long corridor, Sadie Whitlock lay in recovery, her tiny body fighting sleep and fear as if both were enemies. Maya pushed open the door quietly. The room was dim, filled with the steady rhythm of machines and the soft beeping of monitors. Sadie lay curled on her side, a small bundle beneath warm white blankets, her face pale but peaceful in that fragile way children appear when they have cried themselves empty. Her blonde curls spread across the pillow like sunlight that someone tried to hide under snow. Beacon lay on the floor beside her bed, head resting on the metal frame, nose touching Sadie's wrist. His 4-year-old German Shepherd body still trembled occasionally from exhaustion. His sable black-gray fur was matted at the shoulders from crawling through the forest and pacing underground tunnels. His tail lay limp, not from fear, but from devotion stretched beyond physical limits. Maya stepped closer, smoothing Sadie's blanket. "She's stable," she whispered, though her voice carried the weight of everything they'd seen. "But she needs peace." Briggs stood at the doorway, arms crossed, shoulders wide and tense, his dark detective coat dusted with snow and dirt. His ice-gray eyes scanned the room with the focus of a man who had failed too many children in the past. His jaw, always tightly set, clenched harder now as he glanced at Beacon. "He hasn't moved since we brought her back." "And he won't," Maya replied. "Not until she wakes up." Beacon opened his eyes at the sound of their voices, but didn't lift his head. His ears flicked, then settled flat, alert, but still burdened with the fear of losing the girl he'd nearly died to protect. Each time Sadie exhaled, Beacon leaned a little closer, as though measuring the faint warmth to reassure himself she was still alive. Outside the room, the hallway lights flickered. Once, twice, a third time. Maya stiffened. "Power surge?" Briggs didn't look convinced. "No, that's not random." As if on cue, a faint clinking sound echoed through the corridor. Metal, thin, rhythmic, a key on a ring, being rolled between someone's fingers. Beacon's ears shot upright. The dog lifted his head, muscles tensing under his coat, eyes locked toward the hallway. A low sound built in his throat, not growling, not warning. A sound of dread, recognition. Maya stepped back from the bed slowly. "Briggs." "I hear it." Briggs pulled the door open. The hallway outside was long and empty, washed in cold fluorescent light that flickered dimmer with each second. The polished floors reflected only their silhouettes, until another shape appeared at the far end. A figure, tall, thin, wearing a long charcoal coat that brushed the floor. The hood of the coat cast a shadow so deep that no nose, no mouth, no human outline could be seen. Only a blank blackness, as if the man had no face beneath the fabric. Maya's breath caught. "Is that the collector?" Briggs said, voice low. The figure didn't move, didn't sway, didn't breathe visibly. He simply stood there, hands at his sides, coat unmoved by the draft that stirred everyone else's clothing. Briggs lifted his gun, leveling it steady, stance widening. "Hands where I can see them." The figure didn't raise his hands. He tilted his head instead, slowly, unnaturally, like a puppet whose strings had been pulled by a cold and clumsy puppeteer. Maya whispered, "Nathan, something's wrong with him." The lights flickered again. In that split-second darkness, the figure vanished. When the lights returned, he was gone. Briggs sprinted forward, boots pounding across the tile. He didn't get far. But as he reached the intersection, there was not a trace of movement, not a footstep, not a ripple in the air, nothing but a faint metallic object glinting on the floor. A key. Maya picked it up with shaky fingers. The metal was cold enough to sting, a small smear of rust red dried near the teeth. 18. The number was carved deep, uneven, almost frantic, as though someone had carved it while the metal shook in their hand. Briggs stared at it with a horror he didn't show often. 18? A new door. Maya looked at him. "Does that mean a new child? Or a new chapter?" he said grimly, "to whatever nightmare he's running." Beacon whined in the distance, tugging Maya's gaze back toward Sadie's recovery room. She hurried back inside. Sadie was awake, barely. Her lashes fluttered like a moth caught in cold wind, eyes glassy but aware. She looked not at Maya or Briggs, but at Beacon. And Beacon pressed his nose to the bed, tail tapping once in relief. Maya knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" Sadie swallowed, voice a cracked whisper. "He was here." Maya froze. "The man in the coat, you saw him?" Sadie's tiny hand reached for Beacon's fur, gripping it like an anchor. "He wants my sister." Briggs stepped closer. "Sadie, do you mean he took her?" Sadie nodded weakly. "He wants her back." Maya's pulse stumbled. "Back?" Sadie's voice trembled. To trade her for Beacon let out a soft, mournful howl, a sound so small, so grief-struck, it felt like a prayer from a soul who had suffered too much loss. The howl drifted down the corridor like a promise, a vow. This rescue was far from over. If this chapter reminds you that even in the darkest moments, God still sends protectors to guide the lost, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform for more stories of faith and miracles. Sometimes God sends his miracles quietly, without thunder or angels in the sky. Sometimes they arrive in the shape of a loyal dog, a brave child, or a stranger who refuses to walk away. In moments when our world feels cold and uncertain, stories like this remind us that heaven still watches, still intervenes, still lifts the fallen through the hands and hearts of ordinary people. If this story touched you, share it with someone who might need hope today. Leave a comment, subscribe to Angels in Uniform, and join us as we continue to witness the unseen work of grace around us. May God bless you, protect your home, and place his light over every step you take.